Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. Greg Madison wiped the condensation from his scanner's display, cursing under his breath as another torrent of rain hammered against his environmental suit. The dense canopy of Kaela 5's forest did little to shield him from the perpetual downpour. His boots sank into the soggy earth with each step, leaving deep impressions that quickly filled with murky water. Reading nominal, he muttered to himself, a habit formed over years of solitary expeditions. The scanner's holographic overlay highlighted the ancient ruins ahead, their weathered stone surfaces gleaming dully in the dim light. At least something's working right on this god-forsaken rock. The ruins rose before him like the skeleton of a forgotten civilization, their architecture defying Earth's conventional designs. Massive stone archways curved impossibly through the rain-soaked air, covered in symbols that seemed to shift when viewed directly. Greg had chosen this mission specifically for its isolation. After 15 years of watching humanity's politics poison every new world they touched, he preferred the company of ancient stones and his own thoughts. But something about these ruins made his skin crawl beneath his suit. Structural analysis complete, his suit's AI announced. Warning, unknown energy signatures detected. Specify, Greg commanded, moving closer to examine a particularly intricate section of wall. Unable to classify. Energy pattern does not match known configurations. Greg frowned, adjusting his scanner's settings. Just what I need. Another mystery. He stepped forward, his attention fixed on the readings when his boot caught on something solid. Looking down, he noticed a line of stones arranged in a perfect circle, barely visible beneath the mud and vegetation. His suit's AI chirped again. Warning, boundary marker detected. Local settlement records indicate restricted zone. Now you tell me, Greg muttered, already standing well within the circle. He started to step back, but his scanner erupted with readings. The symbols on the ruins began to pulse with a faint blue light, barely visible through the curtain of rain. Well, shit. Hours later, Greg huddled in his weatherproof tent, analyzing the day's data. The rain's endless drumming had become white noise, almost peaceful if not for the occasional thunder that shook the ground. He'd set up camp just outside the boundary marker, though he suspected the damage was already done. Sleep came fitfully, filled with dreams of glowing symbols and whispered warnings. He wasn't sure how long he'd been out when a different sound cut through the rain, a rustle at his tent's entrance. Greg's hand moved instinctively to his sidearm. Years of solo expeditions had taught him to sleep light. The tent's seal parted silently, and a figure slipped inside like liquid shadow. His finger tensed on the trigger, then froze. Standing, no, crouching, before him was the most striking woman he'd ever seen. Her skin was a deep azure that seemed to absorb the tent's dim light, water beading on bare shoulders. Long black hair clung to her face and neck, framing features that belonged in an artist's fever dream. She wore only a simple wrap of iridescent fabric that left little to imagination. "Don't shoot," she said in perfect English, raising her hands. "I come seeking help, not conflict." Greg kept the weapon steady. Breaking into a man's tent in the middle of the night seems like an odd way to show peaceful intentions. A smile flickered across her face. "I've been watching you, Greg Madison. You're not exactly the type to welcome visitors through proper channels." "You have me at a disadvantage," he said, not lowering the gun, "both in knowledge and clothing." She laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "I am Layla, and my current state of dress is practical, given the weather." "Right, because clothes would get wet." Greg's tone dripped sarcasm. "Want to tell me why you're really here?" Layla's expression sobered. "Because you crossed the boundary today. Because our world is dying, and you may be our only hope." She moved closer, water dripping from her hair. "And because I need you to perform the ritual of unity with me, or everyone on this planet will perish." Greg barked a laugh. "That's a new one. Usually, people just try to rob me. I'm serious." Her eyes locked with his, and something in their depths made his certainty waver. "You felt it today, didn't you? The power in the ruins? That was just an echo of what's coming." "Lady, I've been doing this job long enough to know when someone's trying to play me." He gestured with the gun. "So why don't you tell me what you really want?" Layla's shoulders slumped slightly. "I want to save my people, even though most of them despise me. I want to honor my father's memory by protecting what he died for, and yes, I need your help to do it." She straightened, drawing herself up with quiet dignity despite her drenched state. "Kill me if you must, but first hear me out." Greg studied her for a long moment. Everything about this screamed trap, but something in her voice, in the way she held herself. He'd interviewed enough people over the years to recognize genuine desperation. "Start talking," he said, lowering the weapon slightly. "But make it good." "Our ancestors built machines deep beneath these ruins," Layla began, settling cross-legged on his sleeping mat. The movement caused her wrap to shift, and Greg forced himself to maintain eye contact. "Machines that kept our world in balance, but they require specific energy to function." "Let me guess. The power of love?" Greg's voice was dry as ancient dust. A smile tugged at her full lips. "More like the power of genetic compatibility. Your crossing of the boundary wasn't random, Greg. The ruins recognized something in you." Thunder crashed outside, making the tent walls shudder. In the brief flash of lightning, Greg caught the subtle iridescence of her skin, like starlight trapped beneath water. Her features held an alien symmetry that was both familiar and exotic: high cheekbones, almond-shaped eyes that tilted slightly upward at the corners, and lips that... He shook his head, forcing his thoughts back on track. "So these machines need what, exactly?" "A union," she said simply, "between one of my people and an outsider whose genetic pattern matches the old codes." She leaned forward and a drop of water rolled down her collarbone. "You?" Greg raised an eyebrow. "And you just happened to show up in my tent, conveniently underdressed." "I followed you all day," she admitted. "I had planned to complete the ritual while you slept." A faint purple flush colored her cheeks. "My people consider me unsuitable for such an important task. I thought if I could just get it done." "Unsuitable?" Greg couldn't hide his disbelief. Even by human standards, she was stunning. By any standards, really. Layla's laugh held a bitter edge. "Politics. My father was the tribal chief. After his murder, let's just say I'm not exactly popular in certain circles." "Murder?" Greg's interest sharpened. "A story for another time," she deflected, then suddenly tensed. "Did you hear that?" Greg listened but heard only rain. "Hear why?" She moved with liquid grace, pressing him back against his sleeping bag. Her lips found his, soft but insistent. Greg's brain short-circuited for a moment before his survival instincts kicked in. He grabbed her shoulders, intending to push her away, but found himself pulling her closer instead. Her skin was cool to the touch, like silk left in shade. She tasted of something wild and sweet, like jungle fruits after rain. When she finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. "What the hell was that?" he managed. "A patrol," she whispered, still pressed against him. "They've been watching the ruins since you crossed the boundary. I couldn't let them see me here." "So you decided to—" "It seemed like the most pleasant way to avoid detection," she said with a hint of mischief. Then her expression grew serious. "But we don't have much time. The machines are failing. Soon the geological instabilities they've been controlling will tear this world apart." Greg studied her face, looking for any sign of deception. Why should I believe any of this? Because, she said softly, you felt the power in those ruins, and because I risked everything coming here tonight. She sat back, drawing her knees to her chest. The gesture made her seem suddenly vulnerable, despite her otherworldly beauty. I don't expect you to trust me, Greg Madison, but I am asking you to help save my world. Even though your own people reject you, especially then. Her chin lifted proudly. Sometimes the right thing hurts like hell. Greg ran a hand through his hair, buying time to think. Everything about this situation screamed danger, but in 15 years of exploration, he'd learned to trust his instincts. And right now, they were telling him that beneath this impossible woman's story lay a core of truth. Tell me more about this ritual, he said finally. Layla's smile could have lit up the darkest corner of space. Well, she said, it's traditionally performed without all these wet clothes. You're not making this easy to refuse, Greg said, watching how the tense, dim light played across her azure skin. Layla sat before him with casual grace, somehow managing to look both regal and utterly disarming. I'm not trying to, she admitted, a playful glint in her eyes. But I'm also being honest with you. This ritual, it creates life, a child. She leaned forward, her voice dropping. If that's too much, I understand. You could simply rest and I'll handle everything. No obligations, no responsibilities. I just need to save your world, Greg finished. Even though they treat you like an outcast? Layla's smile turned bittersweet. My father taught me that true leadership means serving those who don't deserve it. She moved closer, and Greg caught the scent of rain and exotic flowers. And the ritual itself, well, I promise you won't find it unpleasant. Before Greg could respond, her lips found his again. This kiss was different, slower, deeper, carrying promises that made his pulse race. When she pulled away, her eyes were dark with both desire and determination. Greg started, but voices outside the tent cut him off. In here, someone shouted. The outsider's tent! The entrance burst open and several warriors stormed in, their weapons trained on Greg. Their leader, a tall man with elaborate facial markings, sneered at the scene before him. Well, well, the traitor's daughter trying to seduce the alien. He gestured to his men. Take them both. Rough hands grabbed Greg, yanking him to his feet. He saw two warriors treating Layla even more harshly, drawing an involuntary growl from his throat. Careful how you handle the lady, he warned, earning a blow to his ribs. The leader, clearly the new chief, laughed. Lady? This ugly cast-off? He gestured to a young woman entering the tent. Now my daughter, she is true beauty. Greg blinked at the chief's daughter, whose features seemed to be arranged by someone with only a vague understanding of facial symmetry. She simpered at him, revealing uneven teeth. You must be joking, Greg said before he could stop himself. Layla is... He glanced at her, saw the surprise in her eyes at his defense. She's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, on any world. Silence, the chief roared. You dare insult my perfect daughter? He struck Layla across the face. And you, trying to corrupt our sacred rituals with this outsider? Greg surged against his captors, fury replacing caution. Touch her again, and we'll find out how sacred your face looks rearranged. The chief's eyes narrowed. Take them both to the holding cells. Tomorrow, they'll learn the price of defiance. As they were dragged out into the rain, Greg caught Layla's eye. Despite her split lip, she managed a small smile that seemed to say, well, this isn't exactly how I planned it. Greg couldn't help but grin back. Somehow, in the span of one bizarre night, this extraordinary woman had made him care again. And now, it seemed, He had a world to help save, assuming they survived until morning. Cold rain pelted Greg's face as the guards marched them through the muddy village paths. Torchlight flickered against wet stone buildings, casting dancing shadows that matched his darkening mood. Beside him, Layla walked with her head high despite being roughly handled by the guards. "The great outsider," Chief Marek sneered, his elaborate facial markings distorted by the rain. "Not so impressive now, are you?" His daughter, Senna, pressed herself against Greg's side, running her fingers along his chest. Her touch made his skin crawl. "Father, he's strong. Our children will be perfect." "Get your hands off him," Layla snapped, earning a harsh shove from her guard. They descended into what appeared to be an ancient structure, partially buried beneath the village. The walls bore similar markings to the ruins Greg had examined earlier, but here they were dark and lifeless. Water trickled down the stone steps, creating an eerie symphony in the confined space. "Comfortable accommodations for our honored guest," Marek gestured to a cell carved into the rock, "and a special place for the trader's daughter." The guards threw Greg into the first cell. He hit the wet floor hard, rolling to absorb the impact. When he looked up, he saw them pushing Layla into a smaller cell across the narrow corridor. Senna pressed herself against the bars of Greg's cell, her uneven features twisted into what she probably thought was an alluring smile. "Tomorrow, you'll be mine. We'll create the savior child together, and everyone will worship me as the mother of our people's future." "I'd rather kiss a Martian sand leech," Greg spat. Marek's laughter echoed off the stone walls. "Your preferences don't matter, outsider. The ritual requires only your body's cooperation, not your willing participation." The chief moved to Layla's cell, his massive frame blocking the torchlight. "You know, Layla, I made a promise to your father before I had him executed, said I'd take care of his precious daughter." His voice dripped with false concern. "Perhaps I should honor that promise, in my own way. When my wives bore me, you could serve a purpose, cleaning my quarters, warming my bed." Greg slammed against his cell bars. "Touch her and You'll what?" Marek turned, his face splitting into a cruel grin. "Tomorrow at dawn, you'll provide what we need for the ritual with my beautiful daughter. Then, your usefulness ends." He ran a finger down Layla's cheek through the bars. "But this one, she might entertain me for years." Layla remained silent, but Greg could see the fury burning in her eyes. She hadn't broken her gaze from Marek, and there was something in her expression that made even the chief step back slightly. "Father," Senna whined, still pressed against Greg's cell, "let me stay with him tonight, to prepare for tomorrow's ritual." "No," Marek barked. "The ritual requires his energy to be preserved." He grabbed his daughter's arm, pulling her away from the cell. "Come, we have preparations to make." As they ascended the stairs, Senna's voice echoed back, "Sweet dreams, my future love." When their footsteps faded, Greg turned to Layla. "You okay?" She gave him a wan smile. "I've endured worse from him." Her eyes searched his face. "I'm sorry I got you into this." "Pretty sure I got myself into it when I crossed that boundary." Greg examined his cell's bars. "Want to tell me what really happened to your father?" Layla was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. "My father discovered Marek was stealing ancient artifacts, selling them off-world. When he confronted him," she swallowed hard, "Marek had him framed for treason, then executed him publicly as a lesson." "So he plans to force his daughter to do the ritual with me?" Greg's hands tightened on the bars. "Why not let you do it since you actually know how? Instead of that personality challenge princess of his." Greg's mind raced through possibilities. "These cells, they're part of the same ancient complex as the ruins." Layla nodded slowly, realization dawning in her eyes. "Yes, but the power here has been dormant for generations. Maybe not anymore. Greg pressed his hand against the wall, feeling for the slight vibration he'd detected in the ruins. When I crossed that boundary today, something woke up. And if these walls have the same symbols... You're right, Layla straightened, her eyes widening. The energy patterns might still be connected, but activating them would require a compatible outsider? Greg grinned. Good thing you've got one handy. It's dangerous, she warned. Without the proper ritual framework, the energy could be unpredictable. More dangerous than letting Chief Charming's daughter attempt a botched ritual at dawn. Greg raised an eyebrow. Besides, I'm starting to think this ritual of yours might be worth staying alive for. A faint purple blush colored Layla's cheeks, but her smile was wicked. Oh, it definitely is, assuming we survive the next few hours. Greg placed both hands on the wall, concentrating on the faint hum he could barely perceive. Well then, beautiful, let's see if we can't wake up these old stones and cause some trouble. The ancient walls hummed beneath Greg's touch, energy crackling through the stone like lightning through storm clouds. Under Layla's guidance, he focused on the dormant symbols, feeling them respond to his presence. There, Layla whispered. Feel how the patterns connect. Now push with your mind just like that. The wall between their cells groaned, ancient stone shifting and crumbling. A gap appeared, wide enough to pass through. Layla immediately reached for his hand. Quick, we need to run. No. Greg's grip tightened on her fingers. Your people need you. This planet needs you. Yes, but you need to survive. Her blue skin seemed to glow in the dim light. I can handle the rest myself. Greg pulled her close, cutting off her protest with a kiss that made the air around them crackle with energy. When he finally pulled back, her eyes were wide with surprise. Turns out, he said softly, you're what I need, and I have a better idea. His thumb traced her cheekbone. Let's do the ritual, right here, right now. But think about it, he continued. Once we're bonded, Marek can't force me to perform the ritual with Senna. And he can't take you as his concubine without violating ancient law, right? Understanding dawned in her eyes, followed by something darker, more primal. Yes, but we need... Greg silenced her with another kiss, this one deeper, hungrier. The rain's endless drumming above became a rhythm that matched their heartbeats. Layla melted against him, her cool skin warming wherever they touched. Guide me, he whispered against her lips. What followed was unlike anything in Greg's 15 years of space exploration. Their bodies moved together as if they'd known each other for lifetimes, while ancient energies swirled around them like visible wind. Blue light pulsed through the symbols on the walls, casting otherworldly patterns across their skin. Layla whispered words in her ancient tongue, her voice growing more intense with each passing moment. The energy between them built like a gathering storm until Greg could barely tell where he ended and she began. Time lost meaning. They came together again and again, each union stronger than the last. Tendrils of light wrapped around their bodies, binding them in ways that transcended the physical. Greg felt something fundamental shifting inside him, as if his very DNA was being rewritten to match hers. Finally, the energy peaked. Every symbol in the underground chamber blazed with blinding light. Greg felt power surge through him, through Layla, through the very foundations of the planet. Their minds touched, merged, became one. When the light faded, they lay tangled together on the damp stone floor, still connected in every way that mattered. Greg could feel Layla's thoughts brushing against his own, her emotions flowing through him like a gentle tide. Well, he managed, tracing patterns on her azure skin, that was definitely worth getting arrested for. Layla's laugh vibrated through both their bodies. The ritual is normally less intense. I think the ruins amplified everything. You mean it gets better than this? Greg grinned, then grew serious as he felt her concern through their new bond. What's wrong? Marek will be furious. She propped herself up on one elbow, her black hair falling like a curtain around them. This bond, it's permanent, sacred, but he's not known for respecting ancient laws when they interfere with his plans. Greg pulled her back down for a gentle kiss, marveling at how natural it felt now. Let him come. I'm not losing you to that tyrant. As if in response to his words, shouts echoed from above. The guards had discovered their partially destroyed cells. Looks like we'll get to test that theory sooner rather than later, Layla said, quickly gathering her clothes. Greg dressed rapidly, noting with satisfaction that he could still feel her presence in his mind. Any chance that energy surge powered up whatever machines your ancestors built? Possibly. She gave him a wicked smile. Want to find out? Lead the way, beautiful. Greg took her hand as footsteps thundered down the stairs. I have a feeling this is going to be one hell of a wedding night. The torchlight caught the symbols on the walls, still glowing with residual power. Whatever came next, Greg knew two things with absolute certainty. He and Layla were now bound for life, and he wouldn't have it any other way. The guards burst into the chamber, torches casting wild shadows across their shocked faces. At their head, Chief Marek's expression twisted from confusion to rage as he took in the scene. The crumbled wall, the glowing symbols, and the unmistakable evidence of what had transpired. "What have you done?" he roared, his voice echoing off the ancient stones. Senna pushed through the guards, her face contorting when she saw Greg and Layla standing together. "No! He was meant for me!" "Sorry to disappoint," Greg said, keeping Layla close, "but I prefer my women blue and brilliant." Through their new bond, he felt Layla's mix of amusement and concern. The guards advanced, weapons raised. "Seize them," Marek commanded. "The ritual must be performed properly, with my daughter." "Too late," Layla's voice rang with authority. "The bond is complete. The ancient laws cannot be broken." "Laws?" Marek spat. "I make the laws now." He lunged forward, grabbing for Layla. Greg moved to intercept him, but something else happened first. The symbols on the walls flared blindingly bright, and a pulse of energy knocked everyone but Greg and Layla off their feet. "What's happening?" Greg asked, feeling power surge through their bond. Layla's eyes widened. "The machines. They're awakening. Our ritual must have jump-started the entire system." The ground trembled beneath their feet. Above, the endless rain suddenly stopped, as if nature itself held its breath. "The sacred union has begun the recalibration," Layla announced, her voice carrying a strange resonance. "The ancient technologies recognize our bond." Marek struggled to his feet, his elaborate facial markings now seeming garish in the pulsing light. "You cannot—" "Actually," Greg interrupted, feeling knowledge flow through his connection with Layla, "we just did. Your ancestors built these machines to maintain planetary harmony through genetic resonance. They needed both native and foreign DNA to function." He smiled grimly. "Guess what we just provided?" The chamber shook harder. Stones began falling from the ceiling as the ancient complex awakened fully for the first time in generations. "We need to reach the central chamber," Layla said urgently. "The energy needs to be properly channeled or boom," Greg finished. She nodded. "You're not going anywhere." Marek drew his weapon, but another energy pulse sent it flying from his hand. Greg grabbed Layla's hand. "Time to run?" "Time to run," she agreed. They sprinted past the disoriented guards, up the water-slick stairs, and into a night suddenly alive with power. Behind them, Marek's enraged shouts competed with the growing rumble of ancient machinery coming to life. The adventure, it seemed, was just beginning. The jungle night pulsed with newfound energy as Greg and Layla ran through the rain-soaked paths. Ancient machinery hummed beneath their feet, responding to their bonded presence. They found shelter in a small cave, its walls covered with the same glowing symbols from below. Layla pressed her hand against Greg's chest, her eyes wide with wonder. "Can you feel it? The connection. It's everywhere." Greg nodded, amazed at the sensations flowing through their bond. The planet itself seemed to sing in his blood, a vast consciousness awakening after millennia of slumber. Through their connection, he felt Layla's joy in something else, a tiny spark of new life already growing within her. "You're—" he started, touching her stomach gently. "Yes," she smiled, placing her hand over his. "Our child, the first of its kind." Her eyes sparkled. "I'm glad it's yours." "Touching," a cold voice interrupted, "but ultimately futile." They spun to find Marek and his guards blocking the cave entrance, weapons trained on them. This time, there was no escape. Dawn broke over the village square, where the entire tribe had gathered. Greg and Layla stood bound before them, while Marek strutted on a raised platform. "Behold," he shouted to the crowd, "the traitors who would defile our sacred traditions. This outsider and the disgraced daughter of our former chief attempted to steal the ritual's power for themselves." The crowd murmured, but Greg noticed some uncertain faces. He caught snippets of whispered conversations about the strange energies that had awakened during the night. "The only traitor here is you, Marek." Greg's voice carried across the square. "Tell them the truth about their former chief. Tell them how you murdered him to seize power." Marek's face contorted with rage. "Silence him." "No!" Layla broke free from her guards, her voice ringing with authority. "My father discovered Marek selling our sacred artifacts off-world. He killed him to cover his crimes." The crowd's murmurs grew louder. An elderly woman stepped forward, her face marked with ritual scars. "The signs. The awakening we felt last night. The ancestors speak through them." "They lie!" Marek snarled, but uncertainty had crept into the gathering. "Feel the energy flowing through our world," Greg called out. "That's what your ancestors built. A system that needed both your people and outsiders to work together. Layla and I completed the true ritual. We're bonded now, connected to your planet's core systems. Kill us, and you destroy everything." As if to emphasize his point, the ground trembled. Symbols throughout the village began to glow, responding to their presence. "It's true," another elder spoke up. "The ancient texts speak of such a union, a joining of worlds to maintain balance." Marek drew his weapon. "I won't let these lies destroy everything I've built." He aimed at Layla. "Die like your father, traitor!" But before he could fire, the symbols on the platform beneath his feet erupted with light. The weapon flew from his hands, clattering away. Greg felt power surge through his bond with Layla, and suddenly they were both free of their restraints. "The machines recognize us now," Layla said, her voice carrying strange harmonics. "They know they're true guardians." Images projected from the glowing symbols, memories stored in the ancient systems. The crowd gasped as they watched Marek's betrayal play out, saw him murder their chief in cold blood. "No," Marek stumbled back. "This isn't possible." "The ancestors see all," the elderly woman pronounced. "The truth cannot be hidden." Guards who had been loyal to Marek moments before now turned on him, seizing him before he could flee. His daughter Senna screamed in rage but was quickly restrained. Greg pulled Layla close, feeling their shared strength flow between them. Through their bond, he sensed their unborn child's presence, already connected to the vast network of ancient technology that sustained this world. "What happens now?" he asked softly. Layla smiled, touching her stomach. "Now, We rebuild. Together. Her eyes met his. That is, if you're willing to stay on this rain-soaked rock? Greg laughed, pulling her into a kiss that sent ripples of energy through the surrounding symbols. Beautiful. I'm not going anywhere. Besides, he grinned, someone needs to help you explain to our kid why they glow in the dark. The crowd's tension broke, replaced by cautious celebration. As the sun rose fully over the village, Greg held Layla close, marveling at how seeking solitude had led him to find something far more precious, a family, a purpose, and a love that literally moved worlds. You would believe this outsider? Marek's voice cut through the morning air, regaining some of his previous authority. This primitive who barely understands our ways. The crowd shifted uneasily. Despite the evidence they'd witnessed, years of conditioning under Marek's rule had left its mark. Uncertain glances passed between villagers. I'll prove it. Greg stepped forward, feeling Layla's strength flow through their bond. As the one who's truly connected to your ancestral power, I challenge Marek for leadership of the tribe. A collective gasp rippled through the gathering. Marek's laughter echoed across the square. You dare? He spread his arms wide. The challenge of leadership is a fight to the death. Do you think your off-world combat training can match generations of tribal warrior blood? Greg. Layla's voice touched his mind. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. He squared his shoulders. Your people need to see the truth with their own eyes. The outsider has issued the challenge before all, the elderly woman announced formally. By our laws, it must be answered. Marek's grin turned predatory. I accept. Prepare the sacred circle. The next hour passed in a blur of preparation. The villagers cleared a large circle in the center of the square, marking its boundaries with glowing symbols. Greg stripped to the waist, while Layla helped paint traditional markings on his skin. The symbols will help channel your connection to the ancient power, she explained, her fingers tracing cool patterns across his chest. But Marek is dangerous. He's killed many challengers. Good thing I'm not planning to fight fair, then. Greg caught her hand, kissing her palm. I've got something he doesn't. The drums began, a primal rhythm that seemed to match the pulse of power flowing through the earth. Marek entered the circle from the opposite side, his massive frame decorated with the scars of previous victories. I will enjoy this, he growled, drawing his ceremonial blade. Greg stepped into the circle unarmed. The symbols beneath his feet flared to life, responding to his presence. Through his bond with Layla, he felt the vast network of ancient technology humming with potential. Begin! The elder's voice cracked like thunder. Marek charged with surprising speed for his size. Greg barely managed to dodge the first swing, feeling the blade whisper past his ribs. The crowd roared as their chief pressed his advantage, driving Greg back with a series of brutal strikes. Where is your outsider pride now? Marek taunted, landing a cut across Greg's shoulder. Did you think mere technology could match true warrior spirit? Greg stumbled, blood running down his arm. The pain cleared his head, and suddenly he understood. He'd been fighting like a human, relying on physical skills alone. Through his connection with Layla, he felt her revelation. Stop fighting the power. Let it flow through you. Time seemed to slow. The glowing symbols beneath his feet pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. Greg stopped trying to dodge and instead opened himself fully to the ancient energy surrounding them. Marek's next strike never landed. The chief froze mid-swing, his eyes widening as invisible force held him in place. The crowd fell silent. Impossible, Marek whispered. Greg straightened, power crackling around him like visible static. Your ancestors built something greater than tribal warfare, Marek. They understood that true strength comes from union, not division. With a gesture, he forced Marak to his knees. The chief struggled, but couldn't break free from the ancient technology now responding to Greg's will. "You're no warrior," Marak spat, "using alien tricks instead of facing me like a man." Greg walked forward calmly. "You're right. I'm not a warrior." Light coalesced in his hand, forming into a gleaming blade of pure energy. "I'm something new, like this world needs to be." The energy blade hummed as he raised it. "Any last words, Chief?" "You'll never be accepted," Marak snarled. "They'll always see you as an outsider." Greg met Layla's eyes across the circle. Through their bond, he felt her love, their child's presence, and the vast potential of two cultures truly united. "Maybe," he said, "but at least they'll be alive to make that choice." The blade fell. Marek's head rolled across the glowing symbols, leaving a trail of dark blood that the ancient stone quickly absorbed. The crowd stood frozen, processing what they'd witnessed. Finally, the elderly woman stepped forward. "The challenge is complete. By our laws and the will of the ancestors, we recognize Greg Madison as our new chief." The silence broke. Some cheered, others muttered, but all knew they had witnessed something unprecedented. Layla rushed to Greg's side as the power slowly faded from his body, leaving him drained but triumphant. "Well," he managed a weak grin. "That was different." She touched his wounded shoulder and he felt healing energy flow through their bond. "You're going to be a very unusual chief. Good thing I have an amazing advisor." He pulled her close, not caring who watched. "Think they're ready for some changes around here?" Layla smiled against his lips. "They better be. Our child will need both worlds to grow into." Above them, for the first time in generations, the endless rain began to clear, revealing patches of alien sky. A new day was dawning on Kaela 5, and with it, the promise of something extraordinary. Dawn broke over Kaela 5, its twin suns painting the now clear sky in shades of purple and gold. Greg Madison stood on the balcony of the tribal leadership complex, watching his growing settlement thrive below. The endless rain that once plagued the planet now fell in regular nurturing cycles, turning the former wasteland into a paradise of alien flora. "Daddy! Daddy!" A small blue blur crashed into his legs. His eldest daughter, Aurora, looked up at him with her mother's striking features and his mischievous grin. "Marcus is using the ancestral energy to make his vegetables float again." Greg sighed, running a hand through his hair, now streaked with distinguished silver. "What have we said about using ancient technology to avoid eating vegetables?" "That it's an abuse of sacred power," Aurora recited, then grinned. "But he started it." "Of course he did." Greg scooped her up, marveling at how she seemed to glow slightly in the morning light, a unique trait of their hybrid children. "Where's your mother?" "Here." Layla's voice came from behind him, still making his heart skip after all these years. She walked onto the balcony, her grace unchanged despite her very noticeable pregnancy. Their third child was due any day now. "And how are my two favorite people this morning?" Greg asked, pulling her close with his free arm. Layla's expression turned sheepish. "Actually, make that 3 favorite people." Greg blinked. "Wait, what?" "I just found out." She bit her lip, trying not to laugh at his expression. "Twins this time, according to the medical scanner." "But we just—" Greg sputtered. "I mean, you're already—" "I know." Layla jabbed his chest playfully. "Your Earth genetics are apparently very enthusiastic. Maybe after these ones we could take a small break? I barely have time to run the diplomatic corps between pregnancies." Aurora wiggled in Greg's arms. "More siblings? Can I teach them how to glow extra bright like me?" "One thing at a time, Starlight." Greg set her down. "Go make sure your brother isn't floating the entire breakfast table again." After she scampered off, Greg pulled Layla closer. "Twins, huh?" The council's going to have a field day with this. The council loves it, Layla laughed. Every new child strengthens the bond between our peoples, though I think Elder Kira is running out of traditional names to suggest. Greg looked out over their flourishing society. The old village had grown into a thriving city, where tribal architecture blended seamlessly with modern technology. Trade ships from Earth and other worlds regularly docked at the newly built spaceport, exchanging goods and knowledge. The integration hadn't always been smooth, but they'd made it work. Remember when I was just a lonely explorer who stumbled into your sacred ruins? Greg mused. You mean when you violated our most holy site and I had to seduce you to save the planet? Layla's eyes sparkled. How could I forget? Seduce me? Greg scoffed. As I recall, you were the one who crawled into my tent practically naked to save my people, and then couldn't resist my rugged charm. Layla rolled her eyes. Is that what we're calling it now? I seem to remember a lot of stumbling and blushing on your part. I was being respectful. You were being adorable. She kissed him softly. Still are. A crash from inside, followed by children's laughter, broke their moment. Think Marcus actually dropped the table this time? Greg sighed. Daddy! Aurora's voice confirmed their suspicions. The fruit is everywhere. Your turn, Layla patted his chest. I have to prepare for the trade delegation from Centauri. Apparently, news of our successful cultural integration has spread. Sure, leave me with the easy job. Greg headed inside, then paused. Hey, Layla? I love you. All of you. He glanced at her stomach. Even the surprise additions. Her smile could still light up his entire world. Good. Because according to the medical scan, these twins might have inherited your ability to control the weather, so we might need to add some lightning rods to the nursery. Greg groaned. Please tell me you're joking. Another crash from inside, followed by Marcus's voice. I can fix that. Better hurry, Layla laughed, before our son tries to use ancient technology to repair whatever he just broke. As Greg rushed to handle the latest family crisis, he couldn't help but smile. 5 years ago, he'd been a lonely explorer seeking solitude among the stars. Now he was a tribal chief, a father, a diplomat between worlds, and happier than he'd ever dreamed possible. Of course, he still had to figure out how to baby-proof an entire ancient technological network from weather-controlling twins, but that was tomorrow's problem. For now, he had a floating breakfast table to deal with, and a family that made every challenge worthwhile. Life on Hyela 5 was never boring, but Greg wouldn't have it any other way. Daddy, Marcus made the fruit dance. Well, mostly. The end. In the years that followed, Greg and Layla's legacy would reshape not just Hyela 5, but human-alien relations throughout known space. Their children grew to become bridges between worlds, their unique abilities and heritage paving the way for new forms of cooperation and understanding. The ancient machines continued to hum beneath the planet's surface, their power no longer dormant but flowing freely through a society that had learned to balance tradition with progress. And on quiet nights, when the twin suns set and the selective rain worked its magic on the flourishing landscape, Greg would hold Layla close and marvel at how seeking solitude had led him to find something far greater, a family, a purpose, and a love strong enough to change worlds. Even if that love did result in an unusually high number of glowing, weather-controlling, telekinetic children who had a tendency to make breakfast rather interesting. Dear listeners, so that's how a grumpy space explorer who just wanted some peace and quiet ended up with a glowing blue family and way more parent-teacher conferences than he ever expected. Try explaining to a teacher why your kid's science project literally floats. Who knew that she crawled into his tent could turn into they saved a planet and had enough kids to start their own civilization? I suppose sometimes the best relationships do start with someone sneaking into your campsite practically naked. Note: results may vary. Please don't try this at your local camping ground. Special thanks to all of you who stuck around through the endless rain, ancient technologies, and questionable tribal politics. I promise no actual chiefs were harmed in the making of this story. Well, except Marak. But let's be honest, he had it coming. For those wondering, yes, Greg and Layla eventually did take that break from having kids, right after the triplets, and the twins after that, and maybe one more surprise baby who could somehow turn invisible. The hide-and-seek games were particularly challenging, and to anyone planning an interplanetary expedition, maybe check those ancient ruins for genetic compatibility warnings before crossing any sacred boundaries. Unless, of course, you're secretly hoping to end up as the chief of an alien tribe with a gorgeous blue spouse and enough glowing children to light up a small city. Thank you for joining me on this rather unconventional love story. Remember, sometimes the best things in life happen when a beautiful alien priestess decides you're the one who needs to help save her world, even if you're just trying to get some mapping done. Warmest regards, the author P.S. Greg would like everyone to know that he totally meant to stumble into those sacred ruins. It was all part of his plan. It wasn't. P.P.S. Layla says that's nonsense, but she loves him anyway.